So, Pokey26 here, and we are going to look over the next set of PTR patch notes, week 2, version 2, whatever you want to call it. These did actually come out a few days ago, maybe like 5 days ago, so it's like they've been out for a little bit already, but I still wanted to like go over them myself because I've only briefly heard of a couple things in it and not actually gone through it yet, so you know, that's what we're gonna do. So yeah, this is for 2.0.3, and yeah, the second iteration of it. I'm not sure if there's anything important here, like small fixes. Visuals, okay. Audio, world editor. Mouse buttons are now bindable while changing hotkeys when in a game. I am curious why it says when in a game, because before, I'm not sure if this was already changed at some point, but as far as I know, you couldn't even bind them out of a game. Like they weren't even bindable. In fact, I couldn't even set hotkeys that were not like letters or numbers to items, basically. Like if I wanted to make caps lock my item hotkey, I couldn't do that. But maybe this means, or I think they did finally put that in, but apparently now you can do it with mouse buttons too, maybe, and do it mid game or something, which is cool, I guess. I'm not sure the purpose of removing hotkeys for passives, like where this matters, I guess. Because like you don't really want this to conflict to begin with. I guess it would matter if you wanted your passive abilities to have the hotkey for hold position or attack or stop or something, right? Because then when you're in that menu to select them, you can still use that same key. But when you're not in that menu, it still just goes to attack or hold position, right? Like, I guess it'd be for those kind of whatever for most people, I guess. Um, Changed ordering of mercenaries. Cool, I guess. MMR gains and losses are now doubled. I mean, whatever. I guess they want people uh to split off from one another sooner. Like if you're someone who's really good at the game, they want you to get big MMR right away so that you're not facing the people that are bad, right? That would be my guess. Or, the inverse. If you're bad, they want you to drop down quick enough to not face people that are good. Yeah. So I can understand it, I guess. It's whatever. Okay, now we get to the real changes. So first things first, general changes. And this is the biggest one and one that I have seen mentioned or shown, and its piercing damage against heavy armor is now decreased from 100% to 90%. So I, regardless of whether this change ends up good or bad, I kind of hate changes like this when Blizzard has shown themselves to be unreliable in making quick patches or like updating the game a lot and all this stuff, right? It's the same as the last patch, not the previous iteration of this, but the actual patch where they made wood harvesting rate for Night Elf increased. These sort of changes are only good for the game if the game is going to keep getting continual patches to, you know, further tweak things and make it so it's in working order. Because these are the type of things that can completely ruin balance and meta and whatever. I mean, meta's fine technically, but like balance, you know? Because this, for instance, right? Um, let's put it in perspective. The easiest perspective I know is elves tend to play archers, right? You almost always see elves going like 4 or 5, maybe even more archers early on. But if they're suddenly doing less damage to heavy armor and undead is playing ghouls, orcs playing grunts, humans playing footmen, does this mean elves need to suddenly change to huntresses? Is archers not even viable? And this is just the first thing, right? This change affects a ton more than simply elves playing archers versus a bunch of races that are playing, you know, heavy armor melee stuff. Because it also affects creeps and, you know, there's piercing damage all throughout the game on all tiers, even air units. And so when all of these are hitting heavy armor, it's like this just completely changes the game. And I don't like this sort of change occurring if it's not going to be met with further continual balance. But if Blizzard does actually continue to balance the game in a timely fashion, sure, this could be a cool change to see. Maybe we can see if it works good. That being said, if I'm going to just look at this change as is for the current game state, I think this hurts probably Night Elf the most. Probably Night Elf, right? Or Headhunter Orcs, maybe. I don't know. But I feel like this probably affects and hurts Night Elf the most. Maybe it hurts pal, you know, pally rifle type style as well quite a bit if you do that for human or like heavy rifle styles in general. But human doesn't have to play heavy rifle styles, right? They can play breakers and casters or lots of casters, whatever. Or they can have their damage not even come from the rifles for the most part. It can come from, maybe they just go a few rifles and then they go caster breaker and rely on clap and stuff like that. So yeah. But for elf, most elves are playing archers at the start, and suddenly every other race, which is playing heavy armor melee units, is going to have a stronger start against elf. So you're going to be a lot more reliant on your heroes as elf, I would say. So as an elf player, I don't necessarily think I like this change, but I guess technically, if elf does get to bears, suddenly the bears are stronger against fiends and rifles, which is a good trade-off, right? It's not like elf is only getting punished from this, but you do have to actually get to the bears before that matters, and your opponent has to be playing piercing for it to also matter. That being said, it's only 10%, and 10% might only be like 1-2 damage a hit type of thing. Maybe it doesn't matter all that much. We'll see. But it could be a big deal situationally and matchup wise, or like what units you make. Huntress no longer bounces to structures. Probably fine, but Huntresses aren't particularly great to begin with, so you know, it's like whatever. Honestly, huntresses just need maybe huntresses would be cooler if they just had like cheaper upgrades as well, as in like Moonglaive upgrade and the Owl Scout upgrade. If they're cheaper or researched faster, that would be kind of cool. But I don't particularly think huntresses are amazing, so this doesn't technically matter. It just makes a weak unit weaker. Undead. Animate dead. I thought this was in the last iteration of the patch already. This is like whatever. This doesn't matter much. And then another big one, or I don't know if I'd say it a big one, but another change to Panda. We'll look at it below because there's like all changes down below that includes the previous changes, but these changes are further changing the Panda by giving him more damage for his damage over time, which is cool. His damage over time applies when you haze fire, so casting Drunken Haze first and then breathing. And these numbers do look kind of relevant. Like even just the first. Well, I guess normally haze fire is going to be done at this number, the 14, which is now raised to 15. And in that case, it's like the smallest upgrade. Like it's actually very small. You know, needing like how long does the damage over time tick? Like 5 seconds or so. You're getting like 5 extra damage, let's say. If it's 5 seconds, like, that's pretty small. If it's like a level 2 panda and he's doing haze fire, okay, it's a little bit more relevant. Same with like the final one, but those ones are a lot less common than having a level 3 or a level 4 panda doing this. So this seems kind of whatever for the most part. And then panda move speed. This one is actually relevant though. That is a lot of extra move speed. How often do you see a hero suddenly just get that much extra move speed? Now that being said, I don't know if this move speed really compensates for the area of effect drop that Panda is suffering from. So we'll go to all changes now. I don't think I need to look over most of these, but yeah, Panda. These are all the changes added together now. And yeah, as you can see, AoE had a huge drop, but in return, he's getting a bit more damage, particularly on level 1 breath and level 3 breath, meaning when you're level 5 panda and you can get level 3 breath. And then also the damage over time, also for lowest level breath and max level breath, significant. But trying to compensate for the AoE drop with move speed is questionable. Like it'll help a bit versus air, I guess. Like air, like being able to run up to air a bit quicker with 30 move speed is pretty good. But it's still going to be difficult to get a good AoE off when the AoE is this, or yeah, when the AoE is this small. So overall, I still don't like the panda changes, but maybe in practice it will feel okay. Like obviously this breath can be stronger situationally if things are lined up densely together and likely in a straight line. You know, if if the units are like this, you know, you got like a line of peasants or something, it might be pretty good to just breath through them. But if you got like a bunch of units just spaced out and you got this tiny little breath hitting the center, you're not even going to reach these damage caps. You're not even going to hit most units. It could be pretty bad. And when I've seen a visual kind of comparing these, it looked like the AoE was pretty small. So I don't like that change. And then the other changes we've also looked at previously. But yeah, looks like this patch is mostly further buffing the panda to compensate for the AoE drop, but I don't know if that's enough. The AoE drop's pretty significant. And then this piercing damage thing, which just came out of nowhere. The idea of piercing damage having slightly reduced damage versus heavy armor is kind of cool. I just don't know. Like I don't know if it's particularly balanced in the current state of the game to just toss that in out of nowhere, right? Because like nothing else is changing. They're just like, oh, by the way, this current state of the game that we have that people are thinking is fairly balanced overall. Like the game's generally been considered fairly balanced for a while. Suddenly, we're just going to completely change that by saying piercing damage does less damage to heavy armor across the board for everything, creeps, units, whatever. So this is definitely a big game changer, and I would say it's very difficult to evaluate until we see it in practice. But I would like off the top of my head, I would say it mostly affects the orcs that only play headhunters style. But even then, sometimes against headhunters, the opponents play lots of range too. So it's like piercing versus piercing, in which case it doesn't actually matter. The biggest one is probably archers, right? Now, beyond that, I said it before, like when you actually get beyond that to bears, suddenly it's good for elf, but getting to bears is definitely more difficult now if your opponent is playing ghoul, footman, or grunt, which a lot of the time they are. So it's questionable to make this sort of change. But maybe 10% is small enough to where it doesn't completely ruin things. I would say we just have to see it in actual game. But yeah.